Hey, my name is Eva Greenslade, and I am a female frame drummer. I work with shamanic drums and I make shamanic drums. I'm a shamanic healing practitioner. I live in the UK. I work only with locally sourced hides where possible, and I work on the hides myself. The frame drum has changed my life so much in the last decade. Um, in fact, in the last 12 years, I the frame drum came into my life, became part of my heart when I was pregnant with my youngest daughter, and I um, worked with the drum, used drum journeys to support my pregnancy, to connect with my baby, to connect within, to focus myself on my birth. And then I asked a friend who was a shamanic healer if he would drum for me. I didn't want anyone else in my birth space, so he actually went out to the woods and he did a drum recording for me, which I played. And I remember that even when that drum recording finished and I wasn't able to ask anybody to turn it back on again because I was in the throes of labour, the drum beat still held me. I could feel it in me, I could hear it, and it kept me feeling grounded, and it kept me feeling focused, it kept me feeling safe. And I really quickly birthed my baby. She was my fourth baby. So that's probably why she was super quick. But shortly after that, about 18 months after, I became a doula. And then pretty quickly within my doula career, I was with a client postnatally, and I just felt like I wanted to drum around her. I found a friend of mine, who was running a drum making workshop. So I went and worked with them, and I made a drum in a yurt with a beautiful field of horses next to it. And we sat by the fire making our drums, and it was imog, it was just lovely. But then I felt like, I've got this drum, I don't know how to use it. Um, and then the teachers, that my friends that guided me in my first drum making, their teacher, Stephen and Renata Ash, had a course coming up called Sacred Drumming. So I joined that course, and that course happened to be starting 6 weeks later. Being a doula, I was able to adapt the training. My teachers let me adapt the training to work with pregnancy, to do my research into, because it felt so right that drums should be part of birth. And I know that's not said of all people around the world. The drum has its place in different ways in different traditions, but I just really felt in my heart that it belonged with birth as well, that the drum could hold birth, that it could protect the birth space for the mum and the baby, for the birthing parent and the baby. And so then became a long journey of a decade now of research and working with the drum for pregnancy and supporting that rite of passage for parents and babies. Through that journey, I started teaching, or learning to teach, the sacred drumming course. About 5 years later, of being part of that teaching practices with Stephen and Renata, I then left to teach my own course, which is now the Earth Path Birth Keeper Training, which is sacred drumming and ceremony for the birthing year and beyond. And it holds, it's all about holding women, holding families, and connecting with the baby and working with the baby spirit and doing ceremonies. But drum is the basis. The elements and the directions and the drum are the basics. They're the core elements of this course. And so drum is such a huge part of my life. Through that course I started making drums as well, and over the last 10 years I've been making drums. And then about 8 years ago I learned to start guiding others in drum making. And about 4 years ago, I just felt like I can't keep making drums, not knowing where the hide is coming from, not knowing that process before it becomes rawhide. Because for a long time I was buying in rawhide from the people that were processing it, but I didn't know its background. And energetically, for me, I just feel like it's really important to do everything as ethically as possible, because you're making a sacred instrument, you're making a sacred tool. So I started, actually somebody approached me with some hides. It was about 6 months after I put that call out to the universe and decided not to make drums anymore unless or until that right source came along. I then had a phone call from somebody who worked on a game farm, who had lots of hides available. And we spent about a year together, just swapping skills a bit. And I did a lot of learning into working on the hide. I'm still learning so much. So 3 years later now, I have a few relationships with different game farmers, and I buy local hides and I work on the hides myself, or I guide people in making their own drums, because I feel like, or working on their own hide to make their own drums, because if you know that process from the beginning, you are going to have a much deeper relationship with your drum, because you've seen its hide, you know the size of your deer, you know the land that it walks on, and you know that, the hides that I work with have only been through about 3 hands. The person that culled the deer, who, I just want to say as well, all the farmers I've spoken to have an incredible knowledge and wisdom and insight into the deer herds and the population and our relationship with the deer and the balance of nature. I've not met a single farmer that doesn't have an understanding of that. Whether they feel like they're spiritual or not, they are. And so they have touched the hide, they have skinned the deer, and then I buy the hides off of the people that have skinned the deer, the butchers, and then I work on them. So about 3 hands have touched deer hide, and then the people that come to me, then that hide goes to them for their drums. So it's really, really special, and I can't work in any other way now. So for me, drum making has become, it's like so many aspects of it and working with the drum have woven themselves into my life as a celebrant, as a doula, as a drum maker, as a shamanic healing practitioner. I use the drum in all of those facets. And this particular drum that I'm holding because it's a very different type of drum I made. And it is a drum that I made to be able to place my thumb in the bottom and play it musically on Miranda Rondo's training. She's an amazing drummer who was one of Lainey Redmond's students, and I did her training in lockdown, one of her online courses, and I found that the drums that I had, the 14-inch shamanic frame drums, were just a bit too wide. They're about that wide. So I had one made with a slightly thinner frame, and then I had the frame made, and then I made the drum myself in lockdown so that I could play it myself and play the tunes, as and learn a tune, as opposed to the shamanic heartbeats and rhythms that I play in my work practices and in my space holding practices. So this drum, it feels really special to be kind of holding and bringing into this space, because it's another aspect of drumming that I would really like to learn, and it is the drum that weaves me back into that connection with women frame drummers around the world that do drum musically with a frame drum. And my other connection with Lainey Redmond, who wrote the book When Women Were Drummers, is that when I did my dissertation in my sacred drum, shamanic drumming training, my dissertation was all about working with women through labour using the drum. And in my research, I mean, there were very few articles that I could find. There's really not a huge amount of research out there in drumming for birth, and more often than not, I would hit a wall where people in indigenous cultures would say, no, drumming does not fit birth, or it doesn't quite fit, no. But actually in some places it really does fit. And in Lainey Redmond's book, she speaks of a birth house, a birth space in Egypt that she's visited. And the walls are lined with stone carvings of 13 priestesses holding drums up like this. And it takes you down into a birth room where a woman would have squatted on the floor and given birth in the centre, but surrounded by women drummers potentially. And also there's images of big scary faces of the deity Bas to scare off any unwanted spirits, so that the birth could happen in a healthy good way without anything unwanted coming in. So the drums would have warded that off as well. And and that brings me back to a bit more of a connection with women drummers around the world, because that's also how I found Miranda Rondo, through looking for people that have worked with Lainey Redmond to learn some frame drumming in that style. And that's how I found Miranda, and that's how I found the group. So this video is about, this is a video about myself as a woman, female frame drummer. Also part of a network, a collection of stories of female frame drummers that Miranda Rondo is putting together. And she has a Facebook group called Women's Frame Drummers. Can't think what it's called now. Women's frame drumming, I think. But yeah, so do look that up as well. And if you want to learn any more about my stuff as well, feel free to explore and look up my stuff. I guess I'll put my website at the bottom of this YouTube video. Thank you for watching, and anyone else that is in this circle of women sharing videos on their relationship with the frame drum, I look forward to hearing from you.